hilarious.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Malice Experience. I'm Mr. Malice, of course. Below me, where he likes to be, is Mr. Mystic.
Just kidding. Mr. Mystic. Mystic Salon, 200 bangs, whatever. One of those things. In the blue. My light that I had set up broke, so, I have just the light behind me. Did you just say
Mystic Salon 2 bangs? Is that what you just said?
She bangs.
Oh, okay.
No,
all right. Well,
Pagans in the chat. Just so
okay. I just heard bangs. That was it. So, okay. And our guest for this evening is Orlee Stewart. So thank you for joining us. We're all very excited for this. So I guess to kind of get it started, for the people that, I guess there's probably very few, but for the people in the chat that don't know who you are, tell the people about yourself, what it is that you do, and all those wonderful things.
Sure. So I am a witch that lives in New Orleans. I am a painter, and I create artwork that serves as a portal for spirits to interact with the world. And that has transcended into my work with video media. So I started a YouTube channel that's just my name, Orlee Stewart, a bit over 10 years ago. And I was really inspired by the work of Alejandro Jodorowsky and also Kenneth Anger, where they worked with this concept called psychomagic, where we can take elements from magical rituals and compose it together into video media, and it can have a spiritual effect on the viewer. So that has been the inspiration behind what I have been doing, basically, for the past over 15 years of doing magic and all that jazz.
Nice. So your artwork that you do, is that like available for purchase? Is that personal to you? How does that work? I'm curious.
So I'm actually working with Black Moon Publishing to release a book of my art that will be out next year. And so, because most of the paintings that I have sold, I do private commissions, but I'm only able to take on a few at a time. So I do have like a waiting list for that. If people do want to inquire about that, they can email me and I'll tell them more information. But that's how I do it. And the paintings are also like spiritual icons. So it's very important for me that the work that I do is something that actually resonates with my own spirituality as well. So I can serve as a conduit for that. So yeah. And then I do have some prints of my art on my website as well.
Nice. I'm always looking for like artwork to kind of like fill the office, so like and kind of litter it across the walls. So that's kind of why I ask. So
I really love painting. It's definitely one of the most interesting ways of spiritual expression. A big aspect of the work that I do, especially another aspect of what I do is I'm part of the Esoteric Order of Dagon, and part of what we do is you have some sort of artwork that is a representation of the gnosis that the spirits teach you. And so it's a way of basically communicating that which cannot be explained through just simple communication. So that even could be conveyed through music, for example. It doesn't have to be like, fine arts or visual arts. For example. And so that is a big aspect of it as well, where the art itself is an extension of what the spirits are showing us, things that cannot be explained. And then also it can be worked with as a magical tool, like as a portal, as it were, for accessing particular energies.
That's interesting, because I particularly enjoy painting. I mean, I paint for myself. The paintings I do are not for other people to see or for selling or anything like that, but I've never looked at it as something spiritual. Like I've always kind of maintained kind of like the perspective that it's more psychological and emotional than anything else. So when you say that it's spiritual, so how does that work with you? Like, so for example, like, is that something you can incorporate into ritual? or is it something segregated and separate to that? How does that function?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's lots of ways. So, there's certain aspects that you can, of course, incorporate into a ritual. Like, for example, having the actual canvas as part of rituals that you do, just even keeping it there as part of your altar so the energy is absorbed into it. But then also, you can paint it at certain planetary times. For example, you can even do things like anointing your painting with various magical oils, or like fumigating it with incenses. You can bless it as a ritual object, and of course, like even incorporating things like sigils into it. Um, a lot of the work that also really inspires me is the work of Michael Berdio, who does a lot of work with paintings as golems, where he creates
Mm-hmm.
these, in essence, spiritual creatures out of combining different things together. And these paintings are in themselves a spiritual entity, or as communications between other worlds and us. So it's pretty interesting. There's a lot you can do. Like, you can put it in a ritual. You could even, like, for example, I've done it where because I do a lot of work with the Ars Goetia, so like I
Mm-hmm.
will evoke a demon, and then I can have the canvas in front of me and then start um
Mm-hmm.
doing the painting, but then also like the works, you're probably familiar with Austin Osman Spare and his works with automatic drawing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge inspiration as well to my not only artistic style,
Mm-hmm.
but in magical practice, because he has this whole literary system about automatic writing and drawing, where you basically just let the spirits guide your hand, and
Mm-hmm.
it will create strange or obscure shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, without even being aware of it, you have created forms. And over time, the artist and magician, which are, one and the same, can develop this into quite an interesting practice, where I have done this, gone into channeling states, and I've created like whole memoirs of like going through all the entities from the Enochian system,
Mm-hmm.
and doing an automatic drawing of whatever came through. And some of the things look like strange creatures, sometimes they're shapes, but they all begin as just lines that I'm just letting my hands flow. I'm not thinking about making it into any kind of actual thing or shape, and just
Mm-hmm.
letting the spirit guide you in ritual. So that's another way. There's so many ways that you can do it, and that I have incorporated with it. But yeah, those are some examples, and of course, I'm sure that the people watching could think of even more.
That's interesting. I mean, I've only recently had experience with automatic writing. So one thing that people have watched the channel know that I've been working with Baphomet directly for a very long time. That's like my, I guess, for lack of a better term, my patron deity. That's the one I always go back to is Baphomet. And I bought a leather bound book with Baphomet on the cover, opened it, did kind of like a consecration kind of ritual for it. So it was clean, things like that. And the next thing I know, I just black out and just start writing. Like I knew that I started writing, but then when I came out of it, like there was like 4 to 6 pages written that I don't remember writing. Um, and like I had to go through and read it again. So like it's a very new thing for me. And it wasn't something intentional. Like it wasn't like I was trying to do that. It just happened. So yeah, and I think it's funny that with Baphomet, not many people talk about Baphomet. Like, I'm curious, have you worked with Baphomet at all?
I'm literally sitting on a blanket that has Baphomet on it. I mean, right at this time. Yes, I mean, of course. Um, what's really awesome is that I've had a lot of random spiritual experiences, being part of various magical groups. And one group that I was very active in is the OTO, one of Aleister Crowley's orders. And so I would participate in the Gnostic Mass and serve as a priestess. And so at the beginning of the ritual, you call upon three main forces, and the forces are Chaos, Babylon, and Baphomet. And so those are the forces that we call upon first in the rite, and it's basically like a blasphemous version of a Catholic mass, I guess, if you
Mm-hmm.
want to uh, find a way to describe it for those that don't know what it is. But it's it's more like Egyptian style
Mm-hmm.
in ornamentation versus like satanic in appearance, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. Um, because there's also a lot of like solar phallic worship as part of those mysteries. But Baphomet, it as the divine androgyne, is one of the main facets
Mm-hmm.
of Thelema, which was, my introduction to studying technical magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Like, there's this big kind of like, the reason I ask is because there's this kind of like idea, and actually somebody just said it in the chat. Actually, Baphomet is a symbol, not an entity, and I personally couldn't disagree more with that. Um, what's your perspective?
Well, I think that I agree with both of you because we can create egregores, thought forms into something over time. So even if, like, for example, people are working with a particular demon in a completely inaccurate way to history, it can become something of its own by all these people doing that. And so even if it's not actually, and if it wasn't a historical ancient entity, which I mean, it clearly is, because this is one of the most primal of forces, right? Like the combination of the masculine and the feminine into one is clearly like part of the path of the various spectrums of these things throughout humanity's evolution. There's even those like ancient drawings of yore where they would like have the divine androgyne and the legends of like that being the initial human, and then they were separated. Like there's legends of this stuff in many cultures. Um, and so that figure also is in many cases adversarial because it is it is temperance. It is the combination of the forces together of light and darkness together into one to create alchemy, which
Mm-hmm.
is like, if you look at it as the art card in Crowley's Thoth deck, it's like got the divine androgyne on it, and it says the formula for vitriol across the top, which is in English, if you look in the heart of the earth, you will find the sacred stone. And so the idea is like through our working with these polarities, this is like an ancient magical formula. So I definitely don't think, even though like the creation of Baphomet as we see it was composed by Eliphas Levi,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. It's a reference to a far more ancient
Mm-hmm.
entity and force. I totally agree. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Like, so the reason I say thank you for saying that is because one of the things that I continually tell people is we have a habit in the left hand path to use Judeo Christian kind of like ideals or concepts in the magic that we pull forth and the entities that we work with. And a lot of those are pulled from the Goetia. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here. I've never read the Goetia. I'm familiar, but I've never read it. Because I have this idea in my head and in my soul that everything that we work with is new names for old gods. So all of these entities that we operate with are significantly older than the credit we give them. And the names that we use to call them forth are just the names that they so decided to represent themselves in this era. Same with Baphomet, Belial, Satan, Lucifer, all of them. They made the decision to present themselves forth to us in the manner that they presented themselves forth, and to fully give stock to a book that reads off names and dispositions, I think is cutting ourselves short. Would you tell me what you think about that idea?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that what you are picking on is the evolution of these systems and formulas of magic. There is value in understanding technical formula, especially for people who don't have an understanding of how to structure a ritual or don't have like that innate ability to connect with their own psychic abilities, to see spirits, experience spirits, and that kind of stuff. So, putting things together in the ritual formulas, I do find helps to have, in my experience, get the effects that I want um, in a more calculated manner that allows perhaps less of a chance of error
Mhm.
in regards to like a greater extent of things. But in my own practice, I have greatly expanded on the way that I work with these spirits. So, like, I've gleaned what I needed to from studying those texts and turned it into something completely different, really. I do like the formulas that there's certain aspects of it that I do find quite helpful in regards to like the timing of the moon and things like that. I have a whole course on my website that teaches people about the things that I found relevant from working with the Goetia, especially with um, the creative aspect in mind and really in like learning the actual art of magic, where what does it take to create a ritual where we can lift the veil of ordinary reality around us by saying certain things, composing it at certain times, curating things in certain ways. It will cause a change of atmosphere. Like, I've done the Goetia with people who didn't believe that it was possible for me to show them a demon in a mirror, and I did that when I was like a lot younger. But I've scared the shit out of people with
Mhm.
that kind of stuff because it is possible, but it's not easy to do that, especially for someone who is not experienced in those arts. Like, for them to be able to experience it like easily, there's
Mhm.
things you can use. Now, of course, the reason books like the Ars Goetia and the Lemegeton in general survive over time is because they contain a certain amount of a Judeo-Christian doctrine and stuff like that in the formula, because that's how priests and collectors would be able to keep this stuff without it being destroyed and taken from them, because
Mhm.
it would be like, concealed as it being part of this like, holy sacred thing. Especially if you look at something like the Ars Notoria, where they even go into that in some of the books, like in Skinner's version of it. It's great. But how like these texts survive because of putting those things in there. And then it's up to the magician to take this scripture and say, like, okay, what was put in here to have it survive over time without being destroyed by the people who were controlling what would be there? Or what is the actual thing? And the spirits themselves will tell you, and your success and long-term success will tell you. So like, especially because and one of my theories is because so many people are in contact with like the demonic kingdom, especially over like the past 10 years, where we've had really like this revolution of people working with spirit vocation, because of the internet and the
Mhm.
availability of information, and people sharing their experiences. Like, it is making it more easily possible for people to get in touch with these forces. However, if people are having problems, I would suggest like studying more like magical formula, not because you can't do it, but because like doing it is supposed to be an art and fun. And so if you're like me and you're like an old theater kid and you enjoy doing all that kind of stuff and setting up things, then it should be like enjoyable for you to do. So that's
Mhm.
like one aspect of it, I think.
Definitely, definitely. I have to address something really quick, so I apologize because it's
Yeah,
I have a
sure.
very I have a very short fuse. So to those in the chat that are being assholes, you're going to get fucking banned. Okay? I don't give a shit who you are. I don't give a shit who you think you are. Okay? If you're going to come into my chat and you're going to try to cause a problem, you will be fucking gone. Do you understand me? I do not tolerate that shit. If you're coming here to learn something, then learn something. If you're coming to be here to be an asshole, please get the fuck out and don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way the fuck out. Please.
In Malice, can you just give me 3 extra seconds to do it? But I can help do that. Every time when I go for you hit right after me, it's getting my nerves. Stop it. This gives me a good break for a question that I should have asked a little while ago, and I want to push it out or point it out there. And because people have asked me this a lot, and I don't, just quick background, I don't do left hand path or right hand path. Like, as far as a thing, it's never been a thing for me. I've never really even thought through it or even heard of it really until I started hanging out with Malice and streams and stuff. But one thing that people multiple times ask me is like, okay, so does that mean if I have in my mind that I'm working with somebody, and I don't know what it is because I'm new and I'm trying to figure things out, and I'm working with what some people may consider as Baphomet, and then I don't know that it's Baphomet, and I call it baloney, and I'm making that up, obviously, just to throw it out there. Whatever the name is doesn't matter. The energy that creates and follows behind it is what matters, and that was a question that has been asked to me a lot. So I was just curious, and I know I'm taking it back just a hair, but it kind of all goes together. The names of things and the ideas of things, and for me, has been less important than the experience you have with that, whether it's an entity or energy or deity or however you want to call it in your practice. So,
Yeah,
I don't.
absolutely. I mean, I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries. I have a delay too, and I'm actually the group of people in the other room are listening, and I'm hearing feedback from them. They're watching it on the big TV. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Well, what I was gonna say is, if you think about like people having spiritual experiences around the world who have different languages, I mean, obviously they're gonna have a different name for things, right? That doesn't mean it's suddenly something different.
Exactly, and I think sometimes when we talk about our own experiences, when we have new people coming in or new people that have different experiences and stuff, it kind of cuts them out a little bit, um, because they may not. Oh, that's not Baphomet. Like, to the person that before being Baphomet is just a representation or whatever versus an entity. It's really like what you say and how you explain it, as far as it's more than that, and you have to get to the point where you understand and know that it's more than that, and allow it to be whatever it's going to be in your life, so that you can get that enlightenment and go in that direction. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're really limiting yourself on like trying to qualify things abstractly based on other people's experiences. In my opinion, it shouldn't really like bother you what someone else says that is, because if you know what is true, then people can believe a lie and it doesn't bother you because you know what's true. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
and I mean that applies to lots of stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I've heard, like, with the Baphomet thing, I just use that as a reference point. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that it's a representation, not an actual entity. And with the work that I've done, I beg to differ. But that's the work that I've done, and I can't compare the work that I've done with the work that other people have done.
So, one of the things that this really reminds me of is this like super often misquoted quote from Aleister Crowley, which is like how the demons come from aspects of our own mind. So that's like a thing people love quoting, like saying Crowley said, which he totally did. But if you look at the actual essay where that comes from, he talks about how everything is an aspect of our own mind. So like, we have our own subjective reality
Hmm.
where everything comes from. And I mean that is valid, right? Like everything you're experiencing is through your eyes and through your mind. So just because something is part of your mind doesn't make it not real. And that's the mystery, right? Is like
Hmm.
what is real? I don't know, but I've experienced things that completely are strange, that do not make sense with how we were taught ordinary reality would be.
Hmm.
So I'm willing to say, if you don't think that a spirit is real, or that you don't think that magic is real, put in the time and effort in studying it and see for yourself. For myself, I had a lot of paranormal experiences that made me want to start learning magic, just to, like, have control over my life.
Hmm.
But that's not how everyone gets into it. Some people do just out of curiosity. But I think that in my own practice, yeah, I definitely feel like Baphomet is, and at least is certainly now as an entity, is something for sure, not just an idea.
Hmm. No,
But it's also an
definitely.
idea. Yeah.
It is. Well, I do think that many things, are kind of a combination of both, right? Because it,
Yeah.
I think that the entities and the deities that we work with, I try to avoid using the term demon because, like, demon itself, if I use it, I prefer to try to say daemon, which is where demon is derived from. Is derived from the ancient Greek daemon, which is a guiding spirit. Whereas, for example, angel is a messenger. Um, and so, not necessarily saying historically accurate, but I'm getting off track. I think that everything that we work with is both to us because we are working with that entity. It's both an idea that we want to represent in ourselves. It is, a, thing that we want to represent and express outwardly about ourselves. And then there's the aspect of actually working directly with the deity itself and wanting to learn more about things that we don't understand. So
Yeah. We're like, I always like to think of it as we're ambassadors to these entities into our ordinary world.
hmm, definitely. No, I completely
We
agree.
can't know, like, how can we truly know what anything is? I can't sit here and tell you that I know what anything is. I don't think anyone does. Nobody can concretely define things. It totally reminds me of these really interesting books that I read when I was in school, called The Seth Material, where there's this lady named Jane Roberts, and she channels this alien entity called Seth. And one of the things that he says is, one of the problems with the human race is we're always trying to classify things and put them into these little boxes of understanding,
Hmm.
and how that is limiting our experience and evolution.
But I think that's part of our own evolution that's limiting to ourselves. Like we have a tendency of doing that with absolutely everything in existence. We put everything into a category, everything into a box to try to better understand it. But I think by doing that, though, we can better understand certain things about the world when we try to apply that to spirituality. You can't put spirituality in a box because you're talking
Yeah,
about
and
the.
that's, I mean, that's the mystery of Baphomet right there, right? Solve et coagula, where you divide everything and then you understand it
Mhm.
by combining it.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, for me, so the thing that attracted me to Baphomet, or Baphomet to me, whichever way you want to look at it, because it go both ways, is the balance. Baphomet to me is the epitome of balance because it is female and masculine and feminine. It is chaos and order. It Baphomet is the epitome of all things in existence into one entity at the same time. And the thing that I wanted to represent or learn of myself is how to live in balance. It's the understanding, is one thing I said the other night. Every single one of us are capable of great cruelty. And it is very important for us as human beings to understand that we are capable of great cruelty. that we have that capability inside of us. To sit there and say that you are not capable of cruelty is just to lie to yourself and to lie to the world around you. True power is expressed through the idea of understanding that you as a human being, as an entity in this universe, are capable of great cruelty, but yet you make the choice not to. That is where true power lies. And the understanding of the control of yourself and being able to balance yourself out to the point that, yeah, I can do this, but I'm not going to. And not feel that you have to prove to the world around you that, yes, I can.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the most important things that I've learned from studying magic is the importance of balance to be able to maintain a happy life and to not feel crazy and to be stable and to have all of my, earth in order and all your ducks in a row and to not just be completely falling off. And y'all are probably gonna find this kind of hilarious. Um, when I was first studying to summon the demons back a long time ago, my teacher would have me watch My Little Pony afterward to settle things. He was really into that. And so like that was his way of like balancing out like summoning a demon. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting. And I definitely like have applied that into my own personal philosophies with like the balance of things. And even just in the work that I do, like I'm not really a left hand path practitioner. I'm a witch. Like I work with all the different kinds of forces, and I work with a lot of different types of spiritual systems, a lot of which are not of the same kind of
Mm-hmm.
philosophy where there is this like division between things. One thing that I think is really important with what has come to the left hand path, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this, is that I found that there is almost like this danger of people falling into a what we could look at as perhaps like a reverse Christianity type of mindset where people
Mm-hmm.
have, due to trauma, right, an aversion to lighter type of magic because of that, and in a sense become very much like the people that oppress us. And so that's something that I think is very interesting because when you look at lots of other different cultures like around the world, like if you look at outside of North America, traditional witches will work with all different kinds of stuff. I mean, they'll even work with archangels and Jesus in
Mm-hmm.
witchcraft spells, right, and things. So it's very interesting once you start studying that kind of stuff. And I think it's really important for people to find some kind of balance in your magical practice. So, what really helped me, because I also like had a very uncomfortable religious upbringing that I really hated, and even though I learned a lot from it and I value it because it helped me learn a lot more things that I was able to apply in my own heretical way into how
Mm-hmm.
I'm practicing now. But that being said, I just found like other pantheons that I didn't have such an aversion to. Like I got super into working with Egyptian spirits because
Mm-hmm.
I found those easier to palate than working with angels. Like when I first started practicing, because it just didn't seem so. That still seemed like different enough. And so that's a nice way of balancing too, because those spirits have all different gods and goddesses. They have like lots of different kinds of energies. And so um, if you think about what you're doing, especially if you're only working on like really dark things, it's very much likely that your life will reflect that in some kind of way. Do I adhere to a threefold law? I don't think so, but I do think that the stuff that we do affects our environment just as
Mm-hmm.
like the microcosm affects the macrocosm. So balance is really helpful
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So what do you think about that?
Well, that's a lot to unpack. Um, so I agree to a degree. So with me personally, so I look at I think the concept as of late with the left hand path has been very convoluted. With people that focus far too much on the dark aspects of it. And so one thing I hate doing is dividing magic or spirituality into light and dark, good and evil, good and bad, those types of things. Because just like the world around us, magic is an aspect of the universe. And therefore, magic is not good or evil. It is the intention that you put forth with the magic that you are conjuring that dictates whether or not what it is, what you are doing is good or evil. So the way I explain it is like this. The difference I find between the right-hand path, if you so wish to call it that, and the left-hand path is one defined difference. I understand that the light and the darkness are equal in balance and function simultaneously throughout our lives. You go into the forest and you find a clearing, and in that clearing there's a beautiful purple flower, or whatever color you wish, sitting in the middle of that clearing. And the light of the day reflects off the petals of that flower, and you see the beauty in that flower, and you absorb yourself into the beauty of that flower. You do not become angry at the night because the night takes away the visibility of that flower. You understand that that flower is still there. You embrace the night because the night brings rejuvenation. It brings healing. It brings rest. It brings completeness. And you go back and you view that flower again in the daylight. Both exist at the same time. The difference between what I do and what a Christian or a Catholic does is I'm not wasting my time fighting against the light, because the light exists whether I want it to or not. And the darkness also exists. And within both of those, simultaneously accepting both of them at the same time, exists the balance that we need as human beings. When you begin to fight one in preference to the other, is when you begin to live out of balance. And it's when you lose opportunities to learn and become better. Growing up, I lived in quite a bit of a duality because my mother at the time when I was growing up was a closet witch. And my father, who has since passed, was very Old Testament, brimstone type of, Catholic believer. And so I had kind of both sides of that dichotomy, growing up. And I could see the validity in both of them at the same time. I could see why one believed in one and the other believed in something different. And I don't think either was wrong, but I don't think either was right either. I think they were both wrong in the sense that they went complete extreme opposites without looking at each other's differences and trying to find what they could learn from it. This is not to say that I accept Jesus or accept God, because I don't. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus is an archetype. I believe that he was created in order to control people. I believe that the power that Jesus has comes from the people that believe in Jesus. That argument could be applied to any entity. But I think that we all need to stop fighting each other, because the more that we fight each other, the farther away from truth we're becoming. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just to even take it back to Baphomet again. It's why Baphomet has the one hand pointing up and one pointing down.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's as above, so below.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think one of the hard things that people who are either so far into a specific religion or spiritual practice that they've done either all their life or that they've devoted so much time to, they become so engaged into it, they fail to remember that there are how many billions of people who have different perspectives and are different pathways or parts of that journey that they're traveling on. And I kind of see it like I've used this analogy before, but it's the rubber band effect, right? when somebody who has a trauma, going back to the comment, about the anti, or not anti, the opposing Christianity issue, um, they're so traumatized by it. It's like pulling that rubber band back, and when it finally snaps, they jump so far through. We forget to actually take the journey through to spirituality, because it's not a place to go. Like, nobody's going to end in a spirituality. You're going to go through it. You're going to go through the experience of it and start to learn it. And that's where, you get to a point where balance really isn't a thing anymore. It's not even for me anyway, personal opinion, it's not really about balance, or light or dark, or you know good or bad. It, like you said, Malice, it's literally just the point where things are.
Mhm.
And when you continue to go through your experiences of your spirituality, um it's important in some cases to be able to label those things, because you have to label them. Well, you don't have to. It's nice for many people as human beings to label them, to begin to understand them, and then once you understand them, you can then open that box back up and move on to something else. So I think people just really have that, and I'm it's very true for me even right now. I still have like an ingrained trauma with Christianity, where I have trouble thinking about the archetypes that, like you said, like Jesus, God, all of those things. I want to say, as soon as I hear them, I don't believe in that either. But then I think about it, it's like, well, God really is kind of like the devil, and Jesus really is like the youth, the Father Sage. If you're in that kind of thing, your triple, your Holy Ghost, your um, all of those things. To me, it's all the same stuff. We've just compartmentalized them to try to understand them, and then when we get into a point where we are so focused on our path being the path, we forget that it's really not our end goal, and our end goal, it really, to me, doesn't even exist.
Well, it's not even like what our starting goal was. Like, I mean, one of the things I always point out is that one of the reasons why most of us have ever gotten into paganism was the very fact that we got tired of the structure. We got tired of the idea that this path is the only path. We wanted something personal. We wanted something that we forged
Mhm.
ourselves. And then as time goes on, like most of us fell into Wicca, kind of starting out like with this stuff, because I think most of us are around the same age. So back in, like, if you go to late 90s, early 2000s, Wicca was that path. Wicca was like, you can create your own pantheon. And that was attractive to us because we wanted to be our own. We wanted to be that warrior that was, standing by ourselves and forging our own path and finding the secrets of what existed before all of this. And then obviously people find, that there's a way to make it political, there's a way to make money off of it, and then that's where the gatekeeping starts. You get these people that stand on stages and tell you that they're the only ones that know what the fuck they're talking about, and then ruins it for everybody else. And that's something, it needs to stop. It needs to stop. It's one of the reasons why I constantly talk about occult unification, and people think, well, that's adversarial. It's like, no, it's not. Okay, because the thing is you don't have to believe the same thing to unify under the idea that we all initially started following this. I don't care how many books you've read and how much you think you know. If you truly know truth, to truly know truth is to understand how little you truly actually know. The most ignorant person in the world is the person that sits there and says, I know everything, because you don't.
That's so true. I think that's why there's a big difference between, somebody that's just getting into it and then someone that's been doing it for a large sum of their life, because you realize that the learning never ends. It's not even that. I don't even think there even might be like a finite answer to the questions that we have of these mysteries of the universe, because the universe itself is a living, evolving thing that I think can even be influenced by our own minds if we want to get super abstract about it. But once you actually like limit yourself to something, it can be really corruptive to you, because how do you know that you are completely right about everything? There's no way of knowing unless through experiences. And if it's working for you and it's successful, that's awesome. But it's going to be something where you always will have something to learn, especially because these spirits have so much to communicate to us. if you think about this as like a renaissance of chthonic spirituality, where we are giving these entities voices for the first time in so long. And just to take it back to what you were mentioning earlier, Malice, about the goetic entities being ancient gods and stuff like that. My friend Jasmine Ambrosia, she was just talking to me about that a few days ago, and we'll get more into that later. But that's her YouTube channel, and she has a very interesting Arabic background, so she has access to all this other kind of material that I can't understand because I don't speak the language, and she feels very much that that is the case. And we can't even like trace that back to the captivity in Babylon, and how that is very much where like a lot of these spiritual systems come from studying those cultures. So it's pretty interesting how, um, and in a sense, if you were an ancient god and people painted you as this like horrible monster, you would probably be pissed off about it. And it would definitely take some time getting to know people, figure that out. I mean, even with the Goetia, which just to clarify, there is a book called the Ars Goetia from the Lesser Key of Solomon, but Goetia in general is a study of lunar,
Mm-hmm.
chthonic, demonic entities, just in
Mm-hmm.
general, is like a type of magic. But the book I'm referring to is called the Ars Goetia, and in that it gives you a catalog of 72 different demons, and it gives you their description. But like that was just something that was copied from book to book over time. Those people copying it weren't even necessarily summoning those demons and finding out that information firsthand. So you get a lot of people nowadays that are like curious about working with a particular demon, and they want to know, like, well, what is this demon like? Well, with a lot of them, we don't even really know
Mm-hmm.
because so few people have actually worked with these spirits. There are some that are way more popular to work with than others,
Mm-hmm.
but there's lots of them that people have barely worked with at all, that we have so much to know. So I don't think that there really is any way to say you can know everything, even
Mm-hmm.
about one system of magic, because the spirits are always going to have something to communicate to us. And I think if maybe if you knew everything, that why would you even exist if you knew everything? Like, why are you here?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think like the idea is like, so for me, I've had people call this high magic, and I don't know if that I would go as far as labeling it as high magic. I mean, consider it devotion.
Well, I would say like the main difference between and that's actually really cool that you brought it up, because one of my very first introductions to magic was I found a book in the library that was about high magic and low magic, and it was like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, like a dictionary or something. It was very interesting. But one of the main differences between high magic and low magic, we could say, is the difference between folk or hoodoo magic and ceremonial magic, where in folk practice, we're taking just, objects we might have around our house or find outside. And it's through our intent that we make the magic happen with, like, simple materials. And then the, high magic is, oh, well, the Mercury is in Libra at this
Mm-hmm.
time. And so I've calculated this, and, you know, all this stuff. And so like that's a big difference between it, but you can combine those things together into your own type of formulae.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can work with the demonic kingdom, or things that you would typically find in ceremonial magic. You also find that in folk magic. Like there's a lot of practices, even in like Mexico, where people are taking, Solomonic pentacles and working with them in their own unique way that is different than how the book tells you to work with it, and that works great.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned Mexico, 'cause I actually live in Mexico. Uh,
That's so cool.
so when you're talking about kind of like the combination of like kind of like different types of spiritual paths all at the same time, um, yeah, like I mean, I've my first experience with that was down here because like the Santa Muerte and like people that are hardcore Catholic will still go to Los Cuatro Esquinas, what's called Los Cuatro Esquinas del Diablo, which is basically there's in the city that I live in, there is a four corner spot, which is a crossroads specifically for a reason, where there are like somewhere around like 16 different esoteric shops that do tarot readings and cleanings and things like that, like all at the same time. It's quite interesting. So when I look at the magic that I do compared to the magic that other people do, and I don't knock anybody for doing what they feel that they need to do, but I made the choice a very long time ago to limit myself to as few entities as possible. And the reason for that was to fully understand the entity that I'm working with. And the one thing that us as human beings we can't get back, that we can give and cannot be replaced, is time. And the more time you give to an entity recognizes the time that you are putting in to them. And the gifts and the things that you need and require, you don't even have to ask for them. They come as they are needed because of the devotion that you're giving. And that's what I do. I have two deities that I work with very specifically. My patron being Baphomet and the second being Hel. So, which is, it's obviously not an icon of Hel, but I have Hammer Thor around my neck because the way I describe myself spiritually, which confuses the shit out of people, is I am a philosophical Satanist, but I'm a Norse pagan, is how I describe myself. And people always get stuck on the philosophical Satanist part because they don't understand that I look at the Levian Satanism as a book of philosophy, not a book of theology. And I believe that the philosophy in the book is more attuned to what we need to be doing as people today than any other philosophy that is out there currently. But I guess people consider what I do in terms of magic, they consider that high magic. I just consider it doing what's comfortable. But yeah.
That's really interesting. I think it is important for people to find things that, even if it's unconventional, if it's working for you and your personal philosophies and success in life, then nobody has the right to tell you that you're wrong, as long as you're not, hurting yourself or other people with it. Then, go for it, right? Like, um, and I think that's really interesting about the crossroads and about Santissima Morte, because I'm a devotee of her as part of my practice. I don't work with tons and tons of different entities as well, and I see what you mean. Like, I have not worked with every single demon from the Goetia because I I feel like if I were to do that, then I wouldn't have enough time to spend with the entities that I've already built these relationships with, that I truly care about and love. And it's interesting too, just to talk about Santissima for a second, is that like here in New Orleans, the way that we work with her is in a very much of a Catholic way. Like, we will pray her chaplet, which involves like those folk Catholic aspects
Mm-hmm.
at the chapel here for her in New Orleans. And it's just very interesting to see, very spooky people, but also it's like it's scary stuff, right? Like, she's literally death. Um, so it's a very interesting combination of different things together in one, and I really appreciate those things. And I'm still just like a student of her, so I don't really have any kind of things I can go into about that. But that's something that I've really um, I've learned a lot from practicing with the group here in New Orleans
Mm-hmm.
with that, and yeah, it's been really enlightening for me.
What I found with the Santa Muerte, now you probably know more about working directly with the Santa Muerte than I do because I don't. Very specific reason. From what I understand, from what I've been told from Cuatro Esquinas is it's high demand, low reward. Work with the Santa Muerte. There is, when you want something or you request something, what you must give in return must be of equal or higher value than what you're asking for. The Santa Muerte, I'm treading on ground that I don't want to talk about, but I'll be as non-specific as humanly possible. There's a reason in Mexico los carteles work so closely with the Santa Muerte, because the work of los carteles is, generally speaking, high demand, low reward, especially if you're lower on the food chain in the organization. So therefore, the idea is they're willing to give their lives for the things that they want. And that is a pact that they make, that during the time that I'm breathing, I want to have the things that I want to have. And when I die, I'm yours, is essentially the kind of agreement that they come to. So yeah, that's my understanding of the Santa Muerte.
Yeah, and I'm definitely aware of that. One of the things that we do here that is different in New Orleans from that for sure is that we work with a 3 robes system. So
Okay.
there is the black robe for the dark aspect of her, but then there's also the red robe and the white robe.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they teach here is that you would have a different type of life depending on what robe of hers you are aligned more to. So I think that's very interesting. And yeah, there is that, definitely that like really, really harsh, dark aspect of some people that work with her, but definitely not all the people that work with her are into that kind of stuff. She's definitely like a symbol of hope for a lot of really oppressed people, like a lot of women, a lot of sex workers, or trans people. She represents those that are like oppressed in the marginalized aspects of society. So there's also that whole facet of
Mm-hmm.
her devotees as well. And of course, there's those other
Mm-hmm.
you know art aspects too.
Well, no, there's definitely down here in Mexico. There's definitely those aspects as well. Like you will see a lot more Santa Muerte, like in like the lower income areas down here, and for that very specific reason. In every single esoteric shop that you see down here, not a single one operates outside of the Santa Muerte. So one experience that I had when I first came down here, which was indirectly, I suppose, working with Santa Muerte, is that when I was younger, I had someone tell me that I had something attached to me, something that was draining me, something that was causing me significant amounts of bad luck. And any time that I attempted to do something, it would fail horribly, like nuclear destruction type shit. And so I figured, all right, let's figure this out. So I went to Los Cuatro Esquinas, and I went to the first shop that didn't have a line as long as a football field, because they're only open on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays. So it's like going to an event when you go down there. And basically, the guy set me up with appointments for a few months, doing limpias or cleanings or cleansings with eggs, with huevo. Now, there's a very specific process they go through. So in Santeria, it's not uncommon to use chicken blood in Santeria. And what I didn't know at the time was the eggs they was using were covered in chicken's blood. I should have realized that because they had a brown tinge to them that didn't look like they came from a store. And those were the eggs that, he used to clean me. It started with my head, and he worked kind of like up and down my body over the course of a few months. And though I was skeptical, and this is the reason why I bring this up, because I was skeptical. Like, I'm a natural skeptic. And it worked, because all of the string of bad luck that I was having started to stop, and things started kind of falling into place and working together and becoming what I wanted it to become if I put the energy forth into it. So not magic that I did, magic that I partook in, that I was subject to, that I can tell you does work. So yeah, if that means anything.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have a degree of skepticism for like all of this stuff, because that's going to help you to know what is actually going on and not just get lost in delusions, because we are literally dealing with things that are so fantastical. It's what they write movies about, right? And it's
Hmm.
in so many people's minds this is just fantasy. So when we're dealing with the fantastical, we need to have some kind of way of judging that. Like, for example, that's why if you have an intuition about something, allow yourself to see if it's true or not, and then see how you felt. Like there's a certain degree to testing your psychic abilities. There's also a certain degree of, like, if something strange happens, always think like, what is the most rational thing that could have happened here?
Hmm.
Don't automatically assume, just because you've been doing magic, that the thing is the cause of your magic, but don't blind yourself to the things that are happening and the results. So, like, that's a huge aspect that is the essence of seeing results. It's not always going to be like such a finite, specific thing that you just see and understand, where you're like, aha, the result has happened. It's like the little things, the small changes over time, the synchronicities of how
Hmm.
things unfold, and the way that the universe communicates to you that things are happening and changing. It doesn't, and that doesn't mean you're just going to have like a voice in your head that tells you this is the answer. It's like through omens and through things that those who have the eyes to see are going to figure out. But even if someone is throwing themselves into rituals and they're just waiting to, see a demon right there before them, and are not paying attention to the little things that have changed in the fabric of their reality, they're going to miss it all waiting for some kind of big show.
Hmm.
Now, this can happen. You can see spirits in doing rituals. That's literally the point of ceremonial magic, and a lot of the rituals is to actually see the spirit. And there's lots of ways that you can do it to make it easier. Like, for example, have a ton of incense smoke. For example, like, that's one of the easiest ways you can see stuff. Um, but that doesn't mean that your spell didn't work just because you don't see a physical manifestation. And that's what I know recently a lot of people have been asking me about, like, if I think their thing worked because they didn't see the spirit. And I mean, well, what you have to do is go into it with the intent of entertaining the possibility that it's possible, and that knowing that you can cause change in reality. Like, I think that perhaps if a person were to go through the Olympia and completely not think it would ever do anything, and like constantly reinforce that, I don't know if it could work. But I feel like you have to have a certain degree of self participation in things, and that doesn't mean magic can't affect people that aren't aware of it. It just means that it's easier.
I agree. I think the thing is I think again it comes back to balance, and I think there's different levels of balance that need to exist when doing things. So when I look at the balance that I have with the magic that I do and the ritual work that I do, I don't go into a ritual expecting or hoping to see an actual demon or seeing an actual entity. I go into a ritual to obtain throughout time more information. And I believe that this information comes to us at moments when we are more susceptible to the line between the worlds that we're working with. So, i.e., dreams. Dreams is a very big part of it, of what I work with, especially because I'm the type of person that I don't remember my dreams. When I wake up, it's like waking up from being dead. So, when I do remember a dream, to me, that means that it's very significant and there's something that I need to take from it. So it's become kind of like a key point with me. I don't go into a ritual trying to say, well, I want to see Baphomet. Whatever. Okay. What I understand is that through time, the way that the universe functions and the way energy functions is that you're putting energy out there. And therefore, that energy that you're putting out there is going to take time for it to come back and for there to be a response. And you begin to see things to start lining up in your life. It comes one moment at a time. And there's work that you have to put in your life to help these things come forward. Let's say you want to be an actor. Like that's your dream. You want to be an actor. And you are working with demonic forces, angelic forces, what have you, and you're putting that energy out there and you're saying, this is what I want to do. Well, then you're going to begin to notice people, places, and things that are going to start lining themselves up into your life, presented as opportunities for you to take and actually start to kind of move forward on that dream. But the thing is, if you don't do anything, if you're presented with these opportunities and you're like, well, I'm doing these rituals and it's just going to happen, Hollywood's not just going to call you up on the phone and say, hey, dude, we have no idea who you are, but we'd like you to be an actor. You have to put it out
Yeah,
there.
that's such a great point. It's like, and you'll see other people doing the thing that you really want to do, and suddenly more and more people that you are surrounding yourself with and finding or noticing are doing these things. And it's really about you have to do work. Like you can't just not do anything and not make any changes and expect things to actually change. I mean, your life could fall apart for sure. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can make happen.
Yep.
But if you're not putting in any kind of effort, you're literally just letting the forces of chaos do whatever they want. And I mean, the universe isn't necessarily a kind world, right? Like, I mean, there's all the forces. So it's not, you can't just leave it up to anything. You have to actually know what you want to have happen. So, like, a great thing that I like to think about is the spirits can take us from point A to point B, but you really need to know what that point B is. And maybe point B is a big dream, like being a successful artist or something, and you're just starting out. Well, that's a great point B, but maybe that should be like point J. And there should
Mm-hmm.
be other things that you should put into place, like do you even have skills? Like that's a huge aspect of it. A lot of people get into working with these spirits because they just suddenly think there's an easy way to change everything in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can work with spirits to make you more skilled, but you're going to have to actually do the work to do that and
Mm-hmm.
put in that time and that effort with those spirits. Each one is a step along the way. That's how I think it really helps to like curate your life in regard to having success in magic is to think about what do you actually like literally need to do and what would actually happen? What's like a logical way? And for a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, I just want to win the lottery or something like that. And I mean, there's plenty of other easier ways for you to become wealthy in life that don't have such a high probability of failure because we still have those factors as forces in the universe. If everyone could just do that, then we would all be doing that, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
obviously a reason. And you know, people here and there do, and I know people are going to say they did that, and I know people do that. Like that's definitely a thing, but it's also way harder to do stuff like that than to make yourself more skilled and over time it's easier to put in effort over time in a nice, balanced way, whatever, is a magical practice. Make yourself more skilled in all the areas. So then that way you have long term success. You don't just have some windfall of money that you don't even have the um, brains to know how do you invest that? What do you do
Mm-hmm.
with this? Because you could have like that kind of awesome success and then just spend it all. And then, well, what are you going to do in 10 years? Like you're not going to that's not going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
Exactly.
yeah. Another thing too that really affects it is your life going to be a good conduit of actually like receiving the things that you're asking for. So if you are in a situation where like you cannot have the results that you're looking for, you're going to have to figure out how to get out of that situation. It's not going to be like you have to figure that out. And because if you don't, and you ask for like, let's okay, just to make it a less abstract example. Um, let's say I do a spell to be able to go to Japan, but I never want to like do any of the stuff to apply for visas or go through any kind of, procedures or nowadays medical screenings or whatever. I don't want to do that. Well, why am I doing a spell to make this happen if I am not going to put in the work myself to make that happen? If you did that, then what would happen would be weird things would start happening to you to force you to have to go do those things that
Mm-hmm.
you need to do, whether you like it or not. And that's not often something pleasant. Like if you do a spell wanting something, wanting success, wanting fame, and you're not willing to put the work in, and you've contacted like Satan to help you, and you don't do anything, stuff is going to start happening to force you to do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. So one of the things that with the work that I've done with Baphomet, um, and hell simultaneously sometimes, with my life. So I've been through my own personal hell in my life. I have been through things that I'm not going to even bother getting into right now because it's just going to derail the conversation. Because then it's going to be a bunch of "I'm sorry you went through that" type of shit. And though I do appreciate people saying that, it gets tired hearing it. One of the things that I've always wanted to do was take my experiences and put them forth into a platform that can help other people deal with what they're going through. And lo and behold, the Malice Experience was born. And I'm meeting wonderful and great people throughout the process of the creation of this platform that have also been through their own personal hells, that also use their platforms to help other people dealing with those same hells. And it's something that I can't ignore. Like it's right in front of my face, and people have told me the channel's growing exponentially. I think I don't really pay attention to the analytics, but it's reaching people, and that's the point. The point's not fame. The point is helping people. And then the second thing is that within that, I want to be happy. I want to be happy with myself and be happy with someone else eventually. And that one happened to happen like the universe coming in with a fucking baseball bat and beating me in the head with it. That's how that one came in, because I met someone, and the parallels between myself and this other person, the level of compatibility is to the point where it is literally feels like the universe coming through like a wrecking ball and beating you in the face with it. And again, it's something that you can't ignore. But there's work that goes into doing that. There is desire, there is push, there is motivation, And for example, Mystic, though very quiet, is my best friend and generally a very passive individual. I'm quite the opposite, where I'm the type of motivator where I will sit there and say, get your fucking ass off the goddamn ground and fucking move. He's the type of person who will sit there and say, well, maybe they can't move right now. And I think that the duality of that is necessary in a platform that's trying to help people. Because, sometimes maybe they can't move right now. But, sorry, I just had to say that. Because
Oh, yeah, no, that's, dude, yeah. I mean, like, I definitely, long story short, I definitely have had experiences where I have died and been in hell. So, like, just for what it's worth, like, just if you want to learn more about that, go watch my YouTube channel if you don't know about all that crazy shit that I've been through in my life and why I had the gall to go on YouTube and to start talking about all this crazy shit 10 years ago, which is why people even care about me in the first place. So it's like, because I wanted to share the crazy experiences that I had had to not be so alone. And I also really wanted to teach people about how to summon demons. And in the esoteric groups I was in real life, I was trying to do that. And I had some classes, but then I would get a lot of, hardship in doing that because people felt like, they wanted to have more control over what everyone was doing. And so then I just went to YouTube and started making videos about it. And it has been very hard because of all the hatred I've experienced through doing that, but I don't care anymore because it's worth it because of all the people that I've helped.
Hmm.
And that is like, it's so amazing that it causes me to often like disassociate from reality when I think about like the amount of people that we are able to touch with our message of the world is strange and magic is real. And that if you spend time devoting yourself to these arts, you really can learn so much. Um, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. And not everyone is going to understand you. And I think like what really made me want to talk to you is I definitely like resonate with the vibe of all of us where, we're like, a bit of weirdo people where we're kind of like, alternative and whatever and not normal in society. And we found spirituality as a way of coping with things. And even in like alternative communities, like when I was in the punk rock scene as a teenager and I started to get into spirituality, people thought I was freaking nuts. And I had like that was really hard and so even like among freaks we can be weirdos, and that's like one of the things that I really like about us sharing our experiences with each other, because it's not even going to be the same kind of experience that someone that is living in a very much like basic normal life will experience, just
Hmm.
because we are open to the darkness and the beauty of that and the
Hmm.
things that might scare a lot of people because it has to do with like the spirits of the dead and
Hmm.
chthonic forces and stuff like that.
Hmm. No, no, definitely. And I think that like, I think in and of itself, at least for me, like the alternative culture aspect of things is something very spiritual to me. So with the things that I've been through, I don't look the way I look just because I think it looks fucking cool. Like, can it come across as being, yeah, man, that looks fucking awesome? Yeah, but it's not just aesthetic. It's like when you set up a temple, when you set up your altar, there's an aesthetic aspect to it, but there's also a science behind it. There's a reason behind the chaos that you're creating. And the way that I deal with the things that I've been through is by allowing them to shine through. Where many people hide from their demons and put them in a closet, I let them sit next to me and I accept them. And instead of fighting them and letting them control and dictate what it is that I do, I control and dictate what it is that they do for me. And I think more people need to learn how to do that with their demons, because we all have them. We all have demons. And if you say you don't, you're lying. We all have something that we're fighting against that we don't want to let out to light. And I think that it's very important to let it out to light. And I think the way that I present myself externally is a comment on that, because I would rather consider myself a rather positive individual, though my appearance doesn't let on to that. But I think that's the reason why I can be a rather positive individual, because the shit that most people bury inside of themselves, I let it out, and I let it out in creative ways, and it becomes
Yeah.
positive energy.
It's the art of self-expression. Just as magic is an extension of art, so is the person that you become, and you can transform yourself into that. And I definitely vibe with what you're saying. I think it's really important for people to be free to, dress and adorn themselves in a way that makes them feel comfortable. And it's something that you'd think like being like this most of my life would just make it not weird to people, but like it still is here and there. But I'm also like, I'll sit on the subway and read like some grimoire. I don't care if it's going to scare the people sitting next to me. That's not everyone's path. Some people think that you have to hide all this stuff away and keep it behind closed doors and look like super normal and don't let anybody know, because other people even incorporating like the occult into their aesthetic as like a
Mm-hmm.
trendy, especially among like the youth. They think that's bad, but like I think that's great because more people are accepting of
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. It's not yeah, exactly. It's not an aesthetic. The aesthetic is like a symptom
Mm-hmm.
of the art
Mm-hmm.
and like that transformation. And I think that's really interesting, and it's also really fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, like most of the people that I know that are like goths or whatever, they're all like very happy, cheerful people. We all like joke around and have fun, and so like it's not but we'll joke around, we'll make morbid jokes about stuff. But I think a big part of that is like seeing the beauty in the darkness and realizing that's not something to be afraid, and that's what the real thing that we're all fighting against is those that want to keep these things in the dark and say
Mm-hmm.
that it's not real, and say that we're all just insane
Mm-hmm.
for thinking these things are possible.
Well, I think I just kind of let people think what they want to think. I mean, I think one of the things that I've always enjoyed about being alternative is the fact that simply by looking different, I can cause a person to ruin their entire day because they get angry by how I look. And I sit there and I think about it. It's like, do you realize how much power you just gave me by getting angry at me because I look different than you? Like, do you realize that, like, the power you think you have by insulting me, you have relinquished whatever little bit of power you actually had by even paying attention to me? And I just find it hilarious and absolutely and utterly ignorant of people that still do that to this day. And, like, I mean, I live in Mexico. So, like, when I walk outside, like, I mean, seeing people like me is not common at all. Like, tattoos down here are still viewed as an aspect of criminality. So like if you have a visible tattoos, like people will automatically think that you're some type of criminal. Um, so it's just, I still find it funny because people look at me like holy shit, you know. And I remember, funny enough, one of the cultures that people believe to be one of the most restrictive was the complete opposite. So I lived in Istanbul for about 2 years. So I'm familiar with Turkish and Arabic. Um, and so living there was quite the opposite of what people kind of presented it as. Now, grant you, I mean, if we look at it from religious perspectives, I mean, Turkey has always been considered the more liberal aspect of, Muslim culture when you look at like Iraq, Afghanistan, and things like that. But there's a lot of people from Iraq and Afghanistan. So in Turkey, and most of these people have that same ideal, this very liberal, very progressive idea of advancing the culture, to something much higher. The amount of people in that country that would stop me in the middle of Taksim, which is like the downtown area of Istanbul, and ask me for a photo because they love vampires was, I think I would get stopped at least 3 to 4 times a day, easily. And whereas in the United States, I would have milkshakes thrown at me. So which culture do you think is actually more progressive? I would go with Turkey because nobody threw a milkshake at me. So,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. And yeah, I think that's also why we are okay with like taking on the notion of the adversary. If we look at Satan as a philosopher, even Baphomet, right? In that many cases, that's very adversarial. Just because of that conditioning over time, just being like, oh, I can't change who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's just how it's going to be. So you
Hmm.
get used to it, but it is quite liberating at the same time, that's for sure. And I definitely do enjoy not having the eyebrows. I haven't had them since I was in high school, but it's one of the few things that still upsets people about my appearance, and I get comments on it that every so often on my YouTube channel. But that's like one of the few things that still uh, freaks
I,
people out.
I never understood why you should give a shit about how other people
I
look.
know. I forget about it. Like I literally forget that that's even a thing about me. It's like, oh yeah, that. Well, at least something's still shocking to people nowadays. My goodness. Um. So yeah.
Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
never understood, like, apart from complimenting somebody because you think, like, I mean, okay, it's very Thumper-esque if anybody remembers Bambi. Um, you know, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I think people need to watch Bambi a little bit more often, because it's like, why do you give a shit about what somebody else is doing with their life? Like, if they're happy, it's not affecting them negatively and it's not affecting the people around them negatively. Why do you give a shit? And this goes with anything. This goes with gender. This goes with sexuality. This goes with appearance. This goes with music. If it's not affecting your life, if it's not affecting them negatively, that person, if you believe that that person is some type of danger of suicide or something of that nature, why do you fucking care? Like, why do you
I
believe? Go ahead. Go ahead.
it to me, and it just comes up a lot, and this is going to speak to a lot about me too, about my quietness. People have a fear and a problem with silence and emptiness. Empty space is extremely fearful for most people. I learn the most about life and about what's going on around me by being silent. I'm often called the quiet one. Those who know me in real life know how unquiet I actually am. I spend the majority of my energy and my voice at work usually, or yelling at Rook. Um, and I'm waiting for the laugh to come out in the room next to me. Um, but I think that's what it comes down to. People want to fill in the space with something, and so when they see somebody who's different than them, that fear of what's different, or that fear of what's there, or what could be there, or that could be them, or maybe that's something they wanted to do but were too afraid, and they're angry because they didn't take that chance to do it. I never was a part of the goth culture, the aesthetic, the any of it, the punk rock scene, none of that. I was the token gay kid that hung out with all the people that were in that crowd. So that's why I call myself adjacent. I think that's probably been the most amazing place for me to be, is to be adjacent to all of these groups of people, because it has certainly allowed me to not throw them all into one place. Um, and people just are they feel like they have to fill in that thought. I'm like, you don't. You don't have to make the comment. You don't have to describe everything you see. And if you're going to, maybe make it worth something. You hear people like, I've had issues at work,
Mm-hmm.
with being pagan. So
That's pissed me
to
off.
the
It still
point,
pisses me off when I
yeah,
think about it.
to the point of being called a danger to the organization. Thankfully, that has turned out for the better on the other side. But um, people are afraid of it because they've been hammered with this one thing for so long. And when they see that empty space of something there and somebody walks into it that's not what they expect, they have to kick it out because they're so uncomfortable. Because then they think,
Mm-hmm.
well, wait a minute. Is it possible that I'm wrong? Is it possible there's more out there? Is it possible this could have been different? Is it possible I could have had the real one, but I didn't have it because I didn't step out of my comfort zone? So it's often important to leave that space in there for people to be that way, and then uh, hopefully, they'll make the choice to make that change and to be something better.
That goes into the idea of, like I said earlier, about the idea of knowing that you can be cruel but choosing not to be. It's like, you know that you have the
Mhm.
ability and power to be cruel and hurt someone. We all can, whether it's physically or emotionally. There's a short list of things that we can say and do that are indefinitely going to hurt someone else. Doesn't mean that you do it. And that's the true show of power. Can you control yourself? Because if you can't control yourself, the fuck with everything else. And if you can't control you, what in God's name is going to make you think that you control anything else?
Yeah. I definitely feel like that has been a huge test that I've been going through, like from the spirits, where they're like, well, we're just gonna keep making you stronger. It's like, okay. Okay. But like, I mean, the reality is, even though these things happen, they highlight the things in our life that are good and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
There is always something that you can find, even if it's a like, like what you were talking about for the flower, even if it's a freaking flower that you find outside, like growing out of the sidewalk, you can find something. And that's what makes things nice because we have this dichotomy of energy. It's always going to be there, but life and everything is what we make of it. Like, what are you going to spend your time doing? How is that actually like going to help yourself in
Mm-hmm.
the long run? And it's not easy because I think that anger is very much like a primal instinct of humans, but just in the sense of like, someone that might have a problem with anger, you have to learn how to not react in certain ways. And of course, this doesn't mean don't protect yourself when you're in danger. It doesn't mean be passive and to be taken advantage of, but it just means like, how are you going to take the power you have and use it in a productive way? And the spirits can really test us with these kind of things, but you don't have to do everything that comes up in your life. You don't have to think just one path of spirituality has all the answers just because it's currently the one that you're in and because other people say that it is, if it's not working for you. I'm really sensitive to energy. So that's why I'm really careful about the work that I do. Like, I do rituals for other people as part of my job, but I don't do rituals that hurt other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not what I will do. I won't take money for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do rituals to protect people, but I shouldn't have to be the one to judge whether you're right or wrong
Mm-hmm.
in a situation when you're coming to me as a professional for magical help. I shouldn't have to be making like a moral decision about what you're doing, because I don't want to have to take that into my soul. Um, and like into my life and my energy because it will affect you. Like, doing work for other people affects you. There's people that do all kinds of stuff, but just in my own self and path, I'm very sensitive to that. I don't know if it affects everyone in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I would be naive to say so.
Mm-hmm. I personally don't do curses. Now, one thing I do point out to people, though, is saying that I don't do something should not be confused with that I can't. Because if I feel the need to do so to protect myself, I will. So don't confuse the idea that I don't with the concept of not being able to do something. I've done two in the past. And the karmatic backlash of that was something that I just don't want in my life. Also, another thing that people get upset with about me, I don't charge for any ritual work that I do, any magical work at all. Now, that's not to say that people that do charge shouldn't charge. That's their prerogative. And I always tell people you should go with who you feel comfortable with. And if the person you feel comfortable with charges you $2,000, I guess it's time to start saving up now, isn't it? And the reason that I take that perspective is something that my mother told me. So my mother told me when I was growing up and says that if you can do something to help someone else, that is a gift that has been given to you. You have a gift. What is a gift? A gift is something that's been given to you for free so that you can use it to give it for free to people that need it. Do not charge for that which you have been given free of charge. And I live by that, but that's just me. And people get pissed, like when I say, like publicly, I don't charge. They're like, "Well, you're undercutting everybody else." It's like, no, I'm not.
I think that's completely fine. Like, especially coming from a background in Thelema, where it's also of that exact same philosophy that like you should never take monetary exchange for work. I completely understand and respect that. Like, I think people have the right. Like, of course, you have the right to do magic for people for free. I do all kinds of stuff all the time for free to help people. And I think that it's important. Like you have, even just in dealing with your own psychological state, having something that you do that's an act of charity, of kindness to others is very important and helpful, because one of the things that we learn, like from doing magic, is that everybody is connected with
Hmm.
one another. And so when you do that, that's even like for, in a selfish way of looking at it, like it will help you to do things that are charitable for other people. um it's really important, and there's a lot to that, and it can be in many different ways for sure.
Hmm. No, exactly. I mean, and to the people that like I offend saying that, like that I don't charge or that you feel that I'm taking business from you, trust me, I'm not, because 9 times out of 10, I'm very particular with the people that I do ritual work for and the reasons that I'm doing the ritual work. So I don't just grab any ritual that's thrown at me. Like it's a very extensive process to get me to do a ritual for you. So even though I don't charge, it's not a guarantee that I'm going to do a ritual for the person. So, it's just there's different balances, that go into things.
And
Um,
that's between the people that are doing or making the exchange, right? Like if I'm willing to pay for something and somebody's willing to give it to me for a fee, then that's where the contract ends. That's the decision that's made. It's always been frustrating to me when people get really, I can't think of a better word than uppity about whether you should or shouldn't charge, whether there has to be an exchange. It's like you have individuals and they are making a decision together to do something, then stay the hell out of it. Let it happen,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, that's really up to people and their own things. We're not a bunch of like hot dog vendors selling our hot dog carts outside the stadium, right? Like there's so many more
My
nuances to
sausage
that.
is better than
Um,
yours.
yeah.
I'm sure it is, Mystic. I'm sure it
Exactly.
is.
Yeah, and mine is the spiciest, and it's just one of those things where it's like whatever
Probably.
people's whatever, it's like there's far more to it than just like an exchange, like a store. It's a very
Hmm.
deep spiritual thing between people, and yeah, I think when you're living a life of magic, you are going to be doing things that are magic, like for people all the time. Like you just
Hmm.
probably will be. Just wherever you go, it's like, oh, here you go. I'll do a reading for you real quick. I got my cards in my back.
Hmm.
Or, like, okay, oh, you're having a problem. Like, here, come, let's just talk to the spirit real quick. If you're really living a life where you're not just going to the spirits here and there to get something that you need, but when they're like actively part of your ecosystem, it's super easy to just go into that.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. No, I mean, and even like, so there's somebody that I always talk about that was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but Behemoth X. Um, so I know that Behemoth X charges for, ritual work. And, but the thing is, you know, again, that goes to like who you feel, comfortable with working with, right? I mean, me, I've just got a dainty little altar. That man's got an entire fucking temple, So like, I mean, do you want a flashlight or do you want a spotlight? It's kind of like, what do you want to work
Yeah,
with?
and I mean, just even in like regards to my like the work I do as a tarot reader, people will jive with somebody else's personality and their way
Hmm.
of communication, their way of expression, the spirits they work with.
Hmm.
Um, it's a whole thing.
It is.
Um,
It is. It
yeah.
has to be. It has to be. Right?
Mhm.
One's who you feel comfortable working with, and then secondly, who I feel comfortable working, who you feel comfortable working with. Like, I'm pretty sure there's probably been people that have asked you for rituals that are willing to pay, like that aren't cursing. You probably said no. Because there's
Oh
just
yeah,
something.
almost every single day I have people asking me to do things that I'm not going to do. Um, Beyond that, and I'm not going to go into details of what that is, but just stuff
Hmm.
that's like really fucking disturbing, and I'm not going to do that. So, so yeah, um, or people that are very mentally ill and they need help. Like they don't need to. You shouldn't take their money. Like that's wrong. Um, So that's also a big aspect of it too, because we do attract like, all kinds of things. And it's very important to just be sensitive to those things as well. Um, but yeah, I think that it doesn't matter if you don't need to have a whole temple to be a great magician. There have been plenty of times in my life where I didn't have a dedicated room and it was fine. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's magic. Like you can do magic just with like, a little thing in your hand. Like you don't need to
Mm-hmm.
have a whole
Mm-hmm.
room for it. Luckily we do now. I really appreciate having the space. It helps me to have space to have permanent altars set up to a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of different stuff. It makes it easier for me to film in there and
Mm-hmm.
also easier for me to just escape the mundane world by walking into our spirit room and then there's nothing other than just magic stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really big goal for me that I wanted, and it just helps me to focus. I have ADHD, so like just those kind of things just really
Mm-hmm.
help me. And if you don't have that, one thing that I do recommend to people is you could take like a blanket or a sheet and hang it over stuff
Mm-hmm.
in your room if you find it
Yeah.
distracting from
Yeah. Uh-huh.
focusing on your ritual
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why my altar is like right behind me. It's like right there, because it faces the wall, and I have a lot of tapestries in the room. So this is my office. So I work from home, but I also make sure that everything in this room is it works everything together for creativity, magically or artistically, things like that. It's a room that when I come in here, you know, I can feel the energy in the room. And it's one of the, funny kind of you mentioned about the focus aspect. One of the things I always mention is I remember when I was a kid, and I think most of us are the same way. We got on with just like drawing a pentagram on a piece of paper and sticking it on the wall, and that was like our shit. Like when we first got into it, and then like as we start to get older, like we kind of need like more elaborate setups to kind of maintain that focus and kind of bring ourselves in kind of deeper. Um, because I know that that's with me, like the statue of Baphomet that I have, and the candles and the incense and all of that, because a piece of paper is just not going to cut it anymore.
It's like, well, another aspect of it too is as you get more serious about stuff, you will inevitably, get more stuff uh, over time. And
Mm-hmm.
but a big aspect of it too is it doesn't need to be some kind of big flashy thing because that's not what this is about. We're not a mega church. We don't need like a giant flat screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it's about. It's about nature. So you could just literally sit outside in your yard or go to the woods. I mean, you don't need to have some kind of fancy thing. What really matters is the intent and the energy that you put into it.
Exactly.
Um, yeah.
Exactly. No, definitely. So we are definitely coming up on the end here. We got about 8 minutes left to
Mhm.
the 2 hour period. So I guess we're going to go around the table here and kind of get like kind of like final thoughts that we want to throw out there. So Mystic, because you've been the quietest the whole time, we're going to start with you. like,
I
um,
like sausage, and I was waiting for Rook to bring me a drink, and I'm not quiet. I'm just enjoying the silence. No, I'm kidding. I'm learning stuff. Um, if I have to give, if it were me, just oh God, sorry. Of course, people are coming home right now, and all the dogs are going nuts. Um, you know, it's really important, I think, above all things, that we continue just to have the conversations like this, to have the talks, to have the thoughts, and share those things with each other so that we can have those, you know, learning periods, because we can all sit in a room and talk to ourselves and hear ourselves think. We don't need to hear that. We already know what we think. We need to hear what each other thinks, and we need to respect that even if we disagree with it. Um, every single time we have a conversation or have a guest or anybody on, or I've been looking and watching a lot of Orlee's videos and learning quite a few things that I can pull into the way that I work. And, you just look at it and you're like, hmm, I do that. I like that. I could do this differently. I like that a little bit better. Let's try that. And that's how you learn, and that's how you grow, and that's how you build your own practice. So I think the key really is just to keep the conversations going.
Thank
And
you.
don't ever call me passive again. My head is not passive.
I'm the opposite. I'm like way
I'm just kidding.
talkative when I'm on a video, but in real life, I'm super quiet usually. Uh,
I'm
yeah,
opposite,
I'm
100%.
the opposite. Yeah, absolutely. I there was when I'm actually Canadian, and so growing up, we had a show called Art Attack that I believe was a British show. So British viewers probably know what I'm talking about. But the show was kind of like this guy, and he had all these different art projects that he would show you, and so I kind of like was inspired by that, and I wanted to show people like my real stuff, like how I do things, what it really looks like. I am not perfect. You see how I change over time. You see how I get better at stuff, which I think is one of the most interesting things about like documenting the stuff over time
Mhm.
on the internet, because we have the record of like where we were, back then, and what things looked like around us and what we looked like, and then how we change over time. And you can see like, wow, that actually did something, because
Mhm.
that's the test of time. That's a big aspect of it too. And I hope that people like what I really strive for in my YouTube channel is to give people ideas to help create your own magical rituals and to allow yourself to enjoy the artistic process of it.
Mhm. I can completely agree with that. Um, so I think I have to kind of like echo what Mystic was saying. Um, the whole reason I do this, the whole reason this exists, the Malice Experience, which I think is very ill named if you think about it, because if we think about what malice is, right, is to bring people together, is to hear different ideas. I'm tired of seeing people fighting. I'm tired of seeing the opposition between humanity in general. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of every little bloody detail of our lives being used as a reason to fight with each other. And the reason the Malice Experience exists is to bring people together and present all of you with people that have different ideas and different concepts. And I will continue to do that. And I will continue to try to bring people together. I don't want to say fight this fight, because that's the very opposite of what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to fight. And I'm trying to bring people together. I'm trying to bring people to an understanding that there are people that are different out there. There are people that are going to have different ideals, different concepts, different feelings, different emotions, different everything. And is an opportunity to learn. So, for those of you that know, I'm the founder of the Order of Baphomet, and the 3 tenets of the Order of Baphomet is to teach when you can teach, learn when you can learn, and when neither of those apply, be silent. Because you'll be surprised at what you can learn when you stop talking and you just listen what's happening around you. Those are the 3 tenets. And that's what I try to echo in this show. And having Orlee on has been an amazing conversation. I think there's a lot more things that we could probably touch in significantly more in depth, and at a later date on another show. I'd love to have you back on if you're willing to come back on.
Sure, yeah. I absolutely would be happy to come back. I really enjoyed talking to both of you, and I thought this was a very interesting and thought provoking discussion.
Excellent, excellent. So, for all of you out there in the interwebs and IRL, just stop fighting and start talking. There's a big difference. So, learn it, experience it, and we'll see all of you in the next one. So, thank you for being here. I'm Mr. Malice, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace the fuck out.